was our baby sloth. He is still a baby. He's a year old now. But we just got our next baby sloth, and she's 3.5 months old, so she's much smaller. And so you're welcome to pet him real slow down the middle of his back like that. And we're going to feed him this morning too, and so you can hold the bowl. And we feed him about right there. You want to hold this bowl for him? There we go. So Dash's birthday is August 5th, so he did just turn a year old. Still very much so a baby, and he's still pretty dark. When they're first born, the babies are a lot darker, and then they'll lighten up as they get older. Flash is in there, and he was the one that we're supposed to start out with this morning, but sometimes, you know, we don't ever force the animals to do anything they don't want to do, and so he didn't feel like, yeah, he's all the way up in his 20-foot enclosure, and he's just having kind of a sleepy morning. He'll probably won't come down until a little bit later in the day, which he always does, just sometimes in the morning it takes him a little bit longer, and no matter how much coaxing we do, he's still decided to stay up there.
How long has that been on the farm?
So Flash, we got Flash when he was 3 years old, and we got him about 3.5 years ago. So he is 7, almost 7 now. And then, so he was our first sloth that we got, and Zoe was our second sloth. Zoe was our first baby sloth that we had, and she's an ambassador sloth as well. And so it was definitely a big adjustment from, you know, having Flash, which when we first got him, he wasn't comfortable being around people whatsoever. He came from a facility that was similar to a zoo, so the only human interaction he really had was just somebody going in to give him his food in a dish once a day, and then that was it. And that's what naturally sloths are going to be comfortable with, because sloths are very solitary animals. Yeah, and so it takes a lot of work to get them, you know, comfortable with being around people. Yes, ma'am. I was going to ask about the 10 o'clock guests that were 2 for 10 to 10:30 and then 2 for 10:30 to 11. They're all a family. I was going to see if we want to do all 4 of them together since Flash has not come down. We're using Dash. They're just feeding, you know, while I'm holding. But I've got 2 in right now. So that's up to you guys. Well, my question was.
Yeah, we can do it all together. Yeah. It'd be easier.
I feel like that'd be kind of, you know, more special for you guys too.
More special.
Okay, sounds good.
And yeah, more efficient for you too.
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking. I mean, because you're going to end up doing just 30 minutes and then 30 minutes with them, so why not just do the whole 30 minutes at the same time? So if you wanted to just step out, we'll get them in here too real quick.
You know, and Liam can call them.
Yeah.
Liam, call them on.
We're going to have them come in too. Donna just got back with me.
I can call Mama.
Oh, did they already head back?
I don't know where they went. No, we must be, I see them from the other side. They must be looking at the.
Oh, okay.
Hey, you want to come over and we can do it all together? Okay. Oh, okay. She went to the car.
Oh, okay.
Real quick, we parked right there.
Okay.
They're coming. Yeah, he was eating pretty good.
And so that mixture there, it's a mixture of brown rice, shaved up sweet potatoes, and a really high quality dog food that's been soaked in water and then mixed into it. So that's what we keep our babies on for roughly about the first 2 years of their lives, and then they'll switch over to eating more steamed veggies like corn and squash and zucchini and sweet potatoes and things like that. But they're a lot softer than a lot of people think that they will be, for sure.
Yeah, I thought they were like rough.
Yeah, now in the wild, in the rainforest, they would have a lot more coarse fur. It'd be really bristly. And for a wild sloth, they have a lot of moss and algae and fungus and bacteria growing all on their backs. And it's actually an entire ecosystem that will live on the back of a wild sloth. That's really important for them, not so much for a captive sloth that just lives in a, you know, in a man-made environment where they.
More for camouflage?
Yeah, for camouflage, that's the biggest thing. The second biggest thing is it's actually a food source for a very specific type of moth. No, it's for the moths that live on their back. Those moths will feed off of the moss and algae. And the sloths need those moths because they have a symbiotic relationship with them. So the sloths need the moths and the moths need the sloths in order to survive. In the wild, if the sloths did not have those on their back,
Good.
they would not be able to
My
survive.
grandson.
So the moths will provide a very specific type of bacteria that the sloths actually use to digest their food. So it's really, yeah, it's a whole cycle that goes around. And it's really
They don't need it here though?
They don't
The food,
here.
the extra food?
Yeah, well, they don't here, so the way that they digest their food is through a bacterial process, not an enzymatic process like we do. And that bacteria is really sensitive to temperature changes, especially drops in temperatures. And it never drops in their environment here in captivity because we never let it get cold. In the wild, temperatures are always fluctuating, so that's what the big difference is. They were on their way down.
There.
You guys don't care to just sanitize your hands for me
Sanitize
first?
right outside.
Yeah. Looking at you upside down.
Yeah.
So this is Dash. I was telling him that Flash this morning taking a little bit longer to come down, and so we're just going to start out with Dash. And if Flash decides to come down, then we definitely can. I think he's up there at the very top of his enclosure right now.
So the paw on this side of it.
Yeah.
You see the paw?
Is he in the hammock? I bet he's in his little
he's in the
hammock right now.
You see the paw hanging on right there
Yeah.
on that sideline. Did you see it?
Yeah. But anyway, this
That was
is
Flash
Dash.
up there.
Yeah. Flash, Dash, Zoe, and Chloe is our complete sloth family. What do you think, buddy? Since
He
there's
was,
so many people.
he was eating pretty good
Yeah.
before.
He is our most inquisitive sloth, and so when there's more people back behind him and there's a lot of movement and things, he gets really easily distracted and likes to look around. So they may not eat a whole lot for us.
It's a boy.
Yes, yeah. So he just turned a year old. His birthday's August 5th. And we've had him since he was about 4 months old. So when we first got him, he was only about 2 pounds. So he was really, really small. And when we first got him, that darkest color that he is in the top of his head was actually the color that he was all over his body.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he's lightened up quite a bit. So their eyesight is really poor, and if you put fingers right in front of their face like that, they don't know if it's food or not.
Oh.
So we try to
Oh, they don't
Oh,
see
sorry,
very
we were
well.
letting him smell,
Yeah.
smell our
Yeah,
hands like he would have
yeah.
thought.
And they definitely can smell because their eyesight is so poor. Their sense of smell is actually really heightened. But we do try to, keep that in mind when we're working with them and everything. They have a condition that's called rod monochromacy. That means that they only have rod cells in their eyes and no cone cells.
It's black and white.
Yes, so they only see in black and white. They are colorblind. And what they do see is basically just blobs and shapes. So when he turns his head backwards to look at you guys, he can't tell the difference between, all he sees is 2 bigger blobs and 2 smaller blobs, and he can't really, tell who they are. And so if I was standing right next to you and he looked back at us, he wouldn't be able to tell who's who. But he recognizes me by my voice and by my smell.
The smell.
Yeah. So their sniffer is a lot better than ours is, for sure.
And you
They're so much softer than.
repeat about the digestive
Oh,
system
yes,
and the
the
moth,
bacteria.
the bacteria that grows.
Yeah, so I was telling him that in the wild, a lot of people think that they'd be a lot more coarse when they come here, and they're
Yeah.
surprised with how soft they are.
I was.
And because in the wild they have really coarse fur that allows for a lot of moss and algae to grow in their coat. And that's used not only for camouflage, it's a really important thing for a sloth that has essentially no defense mechanism. They could just stay hidden for the most part. But they also have an entire ecosystem that is living on their back. So they have that moss and algae and everything, but it's also a food source for a moth that will live on the back of a sloth. And the name of it is the sloth moth, because that's the only place in the entire world that they live, is on the back of a wild sloth. Not here, thankfully, because it'd be pretty gross to be holding one and
Yeah.
have one on it. Because there can be anywhere from 100 to 200 moths living on a single sloth at one time.
Oh my
They're
gosh.
small.
Yeah, they're, about this
Oh,
big.
really? They're
yeah.
not that small.
Yeah, no, so they're definitely, a big part of the sloth's digestive system, because they actually will use a bacterial process to digest their food and not an enzymatic process like we do. And so we're born with those enzymes, but the sloths aren't born with that bacteria. They have to get it from somewhere. And so that's where the moths come into play. So in the wild, those moths will provide the bacteria to them through their waste product. So when the sloths are living the moths are living on the sloth's back and going to the bathroom, when the sloth licks that up, that's actually how they'll digest their food.
That's
But-
crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, so in captivity, we don't need those moths though, because we always keep them in a stable environment. Bacteria is really sensitive to low temperatures. It has to be warm for bacteria to survive. And so if the temperature drops out in the wild and all of the moths, are the bacteria that they're producing is wiped out, then the sloths can't digest their food. But in captivity, the bacteria that they have in their gut is always going to stay stable because we keep them in a warm environment. We never let it get cold. That's why it's pretty hot and humid in here today. It stays like that all the time, which is pretty nice in the winter,
Yeah.
not so much in the summer.
So you don't have to give them any supplemental bacteria or anything?
No, so they got the first little bacteria that they needed to be able to start that colony in their system from their mothers when they're about 3 days old, yeah. So around day 3 is when the baby starts to be interested with what mama's doing and what she's eating. And so when we're petting him, just try to use just an open hand.
Oh,
Yeah, they're a little bit more, I can tell when you're doing the scritches, he's kind of
Oh,
wincing in away from you.
okay.
So for a sloth,
Open
that,
hand, please.
yeah, for a sloth
Like
that
that.
has essentially no, defense mechanism
Oh,
in
yeah,
the
it's
wild,
probably
that-
terrifying.
Yeah, and even though he's never been exposed to anything like that, he has been born and raised in captivity, it is still hardwired into him to be able to
Sure.
be cautious about things like that, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. What do you think, bud? He says, there's so much stuff going on this morning. I just woke up.
Bunch of people.
So you can see those tiny little pinpoint pupils right now in the daytime. They stay like that when it's light outside, but at night they'll dilate quite a bit. That allows a lot more light to come in. So their vision kind of works like night goggle vision. Looking through night goggles in the middle of the day, you can't really make much out. So that they really have even worse vision in the daytime. And they are pretty much nocturnal animals, so they'll move around a lot more at night. And that's why scientists used to think that they slept upwards to like 20 plus hours a day. They don't actually sleep that much, they just don't move around any of the daytime. They'll pick one spot, really a comfortable position for them, and then they'll stay there all day long. Even if they're not sleeping, they'll just stay in that same position. And so they used to think it was a whole lot more than it actually is. Usually only about 12 to 13 hours a day is what they sleep. Which, I could sleep that long if I
Yes.
didn't get off, yeah. So, what do you think? He just looks astonished with his little mouth hanging open. What do you think?
Do they
bud?
make any noises?
They definitely do, yeah. So the babies, when they're younger, they'll make a little calling sound to their mothers. Or if they're distressed, like they're really wanting to get something. So Dash is an ambassador sloth, which means that he actively seeks out human interaction and he enjoys it. That's not typical of sloths. Naturally, sloths are very solitary animals. He's had a conditioning from a very young age to get him comfortable with being around people. So much so that he actually enjoys it. I mean, he'll seek it out. When we first came in here, they got to see when he was in that little basket, turned him around, he immediately started to climb up onto me. And so he
Yeah.
wastes no time whatsoever. And so if they see somebody walking by him, or like when I put him back into his enclosure, he'll reach back up at me and he's going, meh, meh. So they make little calling noises like that when they're younger. And then once they get a little bit older, it starts to turn more into a whisper. Zoe, she's almost 2 years old, and she still does the calling. You can see her mouth open up, but the only thing that really comes out is just a little, just like a little squeak that'll come out. So they do lose it with age. But the females of the three-toed sloth, this is a two-toed sloth, so he's got 2 on the front, and he does actually have 3 claws on the back, but all sloths will have 3 claws on the back feet. So he is considered to be a two-toed. Makes more sense to say two-fingered sloth. But the three-toed sloths are the ones that will make calls to their mates when they go into heat. So once it's their time that they're ready to, have the baby, they'll let out a really loud screech sounds. It sounds like a D sharp if you're into music. So it's really high pitched and extremely loud. And she'll periodically let that out every few minutes and let all the males in the area know that she's ready to be bred. And it's like the slowest race of all time. I mean, everybody will just slowly start to make their way to her, and it'll just be the first one that makes it there. That'll be the one that will become the daddy. So they'll stay together for roughly 24 hours and mate a series of times, and then he'll just leave and go back to the tree that he came from. So they definitely don't. The dad doesn't stick around to help raise the baby or anything like that. And for a lot of other groups of animals, there'll be a name, like a herd or a flock or something like that. There's no name like that for a group of sloths because they just don't exist. They're very solitary and they'll stay by themselves. If you see 2 sloths in the same tree, it's either because they are mating or they're just passing through. They're not going to choose to stay in the same tree at the same time.
When do the babies go off and be independent?
So for the two-toed sloths, they'll keep them for about 3 to 4 months, sometimes 5. It just kind of depends on the mother and her personality. But typically it's around 3 to 4 months. So baby sloths are born with their eyes open, ears open, full set of teeth and ready to go. But they rely on mom to be able to start that bacteria colony and get those moths that are living on the mom's back then transferred over onto the baby. And they just rely on her for, protection, one, and how to become a sloth. And so they'll learn what to eat, what not to eat, how to move, where to, how to get away from things and things like that. Because it's not just any leaves of the trees that they can eat. They do eat, exclusively leaves in the wild, about 95% leaf material. But it's not just any leaves that they can eat. So in the Sarcopia trees that they stay in, which is the most common tree in South America, in the rainforest there, those trees will build up a toxin in their leaves over time, and that can be really difficult for them to process and break down. And so they really can only eat the fresh little baby leaves that are just starting to grow. Yeah, and they don't have as much cellulose in them either, so it's a lot easier for them to break down. And they still prefer that. Even in captivity, we feed them baby spinach as one of their choices. And they prefer the baby spinach over anything else, like kale and romaine lettuce and spring mix and stuff like that. We still offer it.
Wow.
But if they had a choice, they definitely prefer the spinach and the little baby leaves. It depends on if they're not very hungry, and I'll give a whole bowl full of spinach. They'll pick out all the tiny little leaves, and the big ones will be left over. So it's pretty funny. They are pretty selective with what they like to eat.
Good shed?
No, so sloths don't have any natural shed to them. Some people consider them to be kind of hypoallergenic animals because they don't shed out and they don't have any dander. And they also don't have any smell to them. So sloths don't have any natural scent glands, musk glands, odor glands, or sweat glands. And so they smell just like the rest of their environment does. And so here, sometimes you can pick up a little bit of a tinge to them, and that's because when they go to the bathroom, they only go to the bathroom once a week. So it's sat in there all week long in their systems. When it comes out, it's pretty putrid. And usually they'll go to the bathroom right at when all the lights go out. And then they're stuck with that in their enclosure for the next few hours until we come in the morning.
Yeah.
And they'll go to the bathroom. They go all the way down to the base of the tree. And Flash's enclosure, you can see, has 2 trees down there, but only one has shavings around it because that is the only tree that he will ever use and has ever used to go to the bathroom. And that's for a very specific reason. They do that in the wild too. And if they didn't do that, we wouldn't have sloths around anymore. So when they do, they go to the same spot every time. They hold onto the tree. They start to wiggle their little booties back and forth. And that signifies all of the moths that are living on their backs to crawl down off of them, lay their eggs in the dung pile, and then crawl back up. And then a week later, when the sloth gets the urge to go to the bathroom again, they go back to that exact same spot. Even if they're a few trees away, they'll go back to that same tree, go down the same side of the tree to the same pile that they did last week, because in that pile are last week's eggs that are now this week's larva, and this week's larva will be next week's moth. So they always go to the same spot every time, so that cycle can always be repeated. Because the sloths are also eating a portion of those moths that are on their back for their food, their protein source. So they eat about 95% leaf material, but the other 5% will be bugs and insects that are on them and on the leaves that they're eating. And then the two-toed sloths are kind of opportunistic omnivores. If they were to come across a small bird's nest with some really young baby birds in it, they would eat something like that just to be able to meet their protein source. What is that?
One of the animals. We can glue it.
Yeah, just some super glue.
Yeah.
It'd be good.
Wow, the moth thing is amazing.
Yeah. Do what? If you were to come across something like that in the rainforest, they probably would take that opportunity to eat something like that. And some bigger breeders, now the three-toed sloths, they don't eat any meat or anything like that. They just eat leaves, and their diets are really sensitive. That's why you don't really see a whole lot of three-toed sloths in captivity, because they can really only eat the leaves of the Sarcopia trees, and those don't grow in North America. But the two-toed sloths can have their diets vary quite a bit. But, yeah.
You guys know what the Spanish word for sloth is?
No.
Perezoso, which means lazy. It's like literally the word for lazy.
The
It's like the
word
word
for
for
lazy,
it's the
yeah.
same word for sloth. That's funny. Papa and I saw one in Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
We saw him
Yeah.
up in the trees and
Yeah. And that's definitely on my bucket list, is to go somewhere and just have like a little tour where you can possibly see some sloths like that in Costa Rica or Honduras.
Costa Rica.
Oh, I'd love to go to Costa Rica.
I went to Costa Rica and it was for work. Went through the last, we were like 10. The last few that went through spotted a sloth on a tree and took a picture.
Yeah.
And then he gave a presentation. He was a marketing guy. He
Yeah.
gave a presentation. The first slide was, "Can you spot the sloth on this picture?"
See,
And everybody laughed. And I didn't know he spotted one, but we could. It was really camouflaged.
Yeah.
It's their only form of defense.
It really is, yeah.
Who
Yeah.
are their natural predators?
So the number one most successful thing that's out to eat a sloth is actually a harpy eagle. So they have the element of surprise, and they are massive eagles, even bigger than a bald eagle.
So they'll grab them and take them.
Yeah, and so the talons of an eagle work similarly to a sloth. For a sloth, they have enough grip strength to actually withstand an entire jaguar holding onto their back, dangling down from them, and still be able to hold onto that branch. So they are impressively strong.
Wow.
But they're not all of the time gripping down really tight like that. So
Yeah,
if
they
an
get-
eagle, yeah, if an eagle comes in, grips a hold of a leg and rips them off, they come off pretty easily. And their claws kind of work like coat hangers. You know, pulling down is a lot harder. You have to break it to be able to, but getting it up off of it,
It's
you know,
easier.
an eagle can do that pretty easily. But the number two thing is definitely a jaguar. Jaguars and ocelots are a pretty common thing to
Because
the
Jaguar
whole of
can
the
swim
sloth.
and
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah, and the reason why that rod monochromacy that they have, the rod cells are what picks up motion, and they have a lot more rod cells than we do, and so they see motion a lot more sensitively than we do. So something small like a little leaf blowing across the floor, or something out of the corner of my eye, I might not even react to it.
But they-
I'm gonna be more concerned about big things coming at me quick, because I'm already, you know, a pretty big thing that doesn't have a whole lot of predators that could potentially eat me. For a sloth, it's a different story. So if they see a little bit of movement out of the corner of their eye, they've got to look and react to it, because anything in the wild that's coming towards a sloth at any rate of speed is probably bad
They
news.
cannot
Yeah,
outrun it.
so what they'll do is they've got to get a head start and try to book it to the end of the branch as quickly as they can. And they can use a short burst of energy if they need to, if they've been startled by something, they're trying to get away from it. And so if they get out there to the very end of the branch where it gets a lot thinner, that branch may be able to support a 10 or 15 pound sloth's weight, but probably not a 35 or 40 pound jaguar or two. And so if it gets out there and presses the matter to get on top of the sloth, and that branch eventually breaks, that's best case scenario for the sloth, because they're built to be able to withstand a fall from 100 feet in the air and be completely
Oh, we're
unharmed.
talking
wow.
high, way high.
Yeah, so those sarcopia trees grow 100 plus feet up in the air, and most of the time the sloths like to be up at the very, very tippy tops of those
Okay,
trees.
sure.
Either the tippy tops or out at the very end of the branches, because, you know, that's where it's gonna get a lot thinner, a lot more easy for them to hold on, but not something bigger. And those little leaves that are just starting to grow are out there too. So that's where they'll spend most of their time, but they're kind of built like trucks on the inside. You know, he looks pretty spindly, those little legs look like they'd be really fragile, but on the inside, they've got a total of 46 ribs, so that's double what we have. It's 2 sets of 23, and it's like a protective casing for all of their internal organs, and their bones are also extremely flexible. So when they hit the ground, their rib cage will just flex under their body weight and go back to normal.
Wow.
And they also don't experience any internal damage because they've got a lot of connective tissue that's holding all of their internal organs right in the middle of their body cavity where they're supposed to be
Oh,
at.
wow.
So they don't really, you know, their intestines don't jostle around like ours would if we fell from that height, or if we got into a car accident. You know, everything's gonna be jumbled around.
That's interesting.
So they only go to the ground to use the restroom?
Yeah, if they were to if they were to be in a tree and there's no other trees around that they can grab onto a limb and transfer that way, they would go down to be able to move into a different tree if they needed to. Because since they can't eat just any of the leaves, they can't stay in one tree for a long time.
Oh,
They
right.
eat about 10% of their body weight every day. So for a 15-pound sloth, it's going to be about 1.5 pounds of leaves.
That's
And
a
you know,
lot.
yeah, leaves are little, and so it takes a lot of leaves to make up 1.5 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you think about that, you know, they eat for about 7 to 10 days, 10% every single day, and build up and gain and gain and eat, and then go to the bathroom. They drop down about 1/3 of their entire body weight.
Wow.
And so some people, when I tell them that they only go to the bathroom once a week, are like, man, I wish I could do that. And I'm like, I really
No,
don't
you
think I would want to
don't.
have a 60-pound bathroom break.
No.
Yeah.
Gosh.
We definitely need some new plumbing or something. What do you think, Bud? And so you guys are staying in the bandwagon?
Yes,
Yeah. When did you guys come in?
Friday.
Friday?
Okay. Yeah, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
How much longer are you guys staying?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. You had any other cool encounters?
Yes.
We did the Fennec
Oh,
Fox
yeah?
here
The
before.
fox.
Yeah.
And of course we did the tour and saw the kangaroos.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a special place.
anymore?
Are you familiar with the the llamas on the farm.
Mhm.
So if you go to the pavilion, there's this one llama that doesn't like you to be there. Like even if you just sit there not doing like anything.
The biggest one?
I think it is
Yes.
the biggest.
Yeah, that's Cusco.
That is Cusco?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was a bottle baby, and so it's like he puts on this front that he's like big and bad and I'll spit in your face. And he would if he gave me the
Yeah.
opportunity
Oh, she
to.
spit.
He
She
did.
spit her.
He did. We weren't doing anything.
She got her.
Yeah, yeah. And it's always out there too, that when people go out there, he's like, what, why are you out
He
here?
likes that.
But, yeah, but if you put your hand right in his face and you just keep it there, when he pins his ears back, he'll swallow that spit and he'll keep
Oh, that's
it
what
right there.
John said. He said something about
That's
that.
it,
Yeah,
correct.
that's
Yeah.
right.
She didn't like me. They were at the pavilion, and I was started walking in the bridge, and he came running and cut me off in the bridge. I was like, okay, I'm not going. I'm gonna stay here. But then she went back, and then I went and gave him the back to him, and he came up and sniffed me all around.
He's a sweet boy.
Yeah.
He really is.
He was fine.
Yeah, he wouldn't hurt a fly. He'd probably spit on a fly, but,
Yeah, no, he was
wouldn't hurt
fine
anybody.
afterwards.
Yeah. What do you think, buddy? You got that tiny little bit of tongue sticking out. And he has always done that, ever since we
Oh, really?
first got him, yes. He's always kept his little tongue sticking out like that. I don't know how it doesn't dry out.
What does it mean when he squints his eyes?
He's just getting sleepy.
Is that what
Yeah,
it
he
is?
does that a lot. And if it starts to, like, everything is constant, there's not a whole lot of movement, he'll start to close his eyes and he'll fall asleep on somebody. If they're sitting down, there's not a whole lot going on behind him, he will definitely fall asleep on somebody. He would prefer to be in somebody's lap or in somebody's arms than be in an enclosure by himself. And so sloths are very easily stressed animals. And for Flash, Flash has never been held. We have never held him, and if we ever do, that'll be completely his decision to climb onto us. Now, it would be stressful for him if he started to come down and we tried to take him down out of the tree. It'd be a very stressful event. For Dash, it would be more stressful for him to go an entire day without seeing anybody than it would be for him to be fully booked for his entire day. So he has the opportunity to have an hour of encounter first thing in the morning and in the afternoon, and that's it. So he can only have 2 hours of encounter total. He would gladly hold on to somebody for much longer than that, but he still needs time to be able to do, just sloth things and just be able to sleep and nap and eat and do whatever he wants to do by himself. And keep him looking forward to the next encounter. And he knows right in the afternoon at 4 o'clock when it's in his encounter time, typically there's a farm tour going through right at about that time. So yeah, when he hears people out there talking, hears John's voice, he starts to stir a lot more and starts to reach out and get a lot more active and trying to look to see if somebody's coming to get him, because he knows it should be right at about time that I get my snuggles. And even if nobody has booked for that time slot, I still try to hold him for at least 30 minutes of the hour encounter time, just to keep him on that schedule and keep him, understanding that this is the time that you get that.
So is it his personality? It's the combination of his personality and his conditioning where
Yes.
he likes to be around?
And it definitely is. That's a good point too, that it is, the personality does factor into it, because not all sloths that go through the conditioning program will become ambassador sloths. And so Chloe, the sloth that we just got a little over 2 weeks ago now, she has been long awaited. We had the name Chloe picked out for a lot longer than we have had her, but we thought that she was gonna come about 2-3 months ago. And it was of course, it was a different sloth at the time. She was going through the ambassador program and was doing well, but then after she was weaned from her mother, the breeder kind of started picking up. She was more so just tolerating the interaction and wasn't actively seeking it out like he likes his ambassadors to do. And so he just let us know, it's not going to be that good of a fit for you guys with how much you're expecting to be able to hold, and she's just not, she's not that much into it. And so that was completely fine with us. She went to a facility that was more so like a zoo, where there's going to be people that would be in and out interacting with her to an extent, but not holding her like this and not having, that much one-on-one time, because they are easily stressed, and you don't ever want to put them through something that,
Well, that's good. That's like responsible, animal
And that's the
stewardship.
same thing with Flash, like I was telling him this morning. This encounter is not what you're supposed to have. You're supposed to see Flash this morning.
Yeah.
So typically he comes down, when I get here at 9 o'clock, I go ahead and open up his door, and I start chopping up veggies in here and talking, and Kevin usually does a little bit of a live And so he starts to hear all that, and he's like, okay, it's my time to shine. I'm supposed to come down because I get my food. And he'll come down, he'll hook onto that door frame, and then come out here onto this branch to be able to get his breakfast. Yeah, and he knows that he gets it out here, and even if he doesn't come out, like after we end this encounter, his food is gonna go into his dish. So regardless of whether or not he comes out, he still gets his food, but he still has to come down for it. And so he understands that if I just come down and I go ahead and come out here first thing, and I get it a lot more sooner than I would. And it's easier for him too to eat out of somebody's hand than it is for him to eat out of his dish. Because in the morning he gets a lot of stick veggies, and in the dish those sticks tend to lay down. And so if he has somebody hand feeding him, he can ingest it a lot quicker. And so he does prefer to come out, and he prefers, you know, he really does enjoy John. John is his favorite person in the entire world. I'm pretty much just chopped liver compared to John, because I've only been here for about 4.5 months. And John has been his primary caregiver from day one. So when we got him 3.5 years ago, John was the person that got him comfortable with being around people. He came from a facility that was similar to a zoo, where he was observation only, and the most human interaction he had was just somebody going in to put food in his dish and then leave. And that's what he was comfortable with. So when he came here, and John would spend hours of the day sitting in his enclosure, talking to him, just getting him comfortable, you know, having a banana in his hand to kind of blow up the smell to him, because he loves bananas. He would eat an entire banana in one sitting if we let him, so we do have to monitor that. But he loves bananas, and so eventually, after about 2 years, is really when he started to warm up enough to where he'd come down and start to spend time around John, and slowly start to eat out of a dish. He would hold like that whole bowl up to him like that, and he'd start to eat some food out of that. And it took him even longer to go from that to then eating out of his hand. And an even longer time to go from eating out of John's hand to eating out of a bowl of somebody he didn't know. So his encounter has been long in the making.
It's amazing that he got
there.
Yeah. He's been about the last year been comfortable with, you know, coming out here under this branch and doing that with us.
Oh, there's a banana right there.
Yes, that was his incentive this morning, but he still was not interested in the banana.
If the temperature is right outside, they let him in?
Yeah, so it has to be above 75 degrees, and once it gets there, we open up that door, and there's a stick that we set up for him to be able to climb onto.
Yeah.
And he loves being out there, as long as there's not a whole lot of kids running around and yipping and yapping and being loud. He'd stay inside if that was the case, or like farm tours and they start to come through, he'll come back in. But otherwise, he loves to be out there. But if it starts to sprinkle, you better believe he comes in here pretty quickly. No, he comes in really quick. Even if the temperature hasn't started to drop, he'll come in quickly. Now Zoe, she's a little bit different. She's a little bit more spoiled. If she's outside and it starts to rain, she just kind of curls up into a little ball, and she's like, somebody's got to come to get me soon. I just don't. And so we've got to go out there and get her. But if they definitely had a preference between being rained on or being inside, they'd rather be inside.
So there are 4?
Yes, we have 4
Are
sloths
they all in
total.
here?
2
No.
are in here?
No, so Flash is in there. Flash will always be by himself because he's never been around any other sloths. Zoe's in there by herself right now. Here's Dash, and then Chloe is up at the house. So Chloe, you know, she just came here 2 weeks ago, and she's 3.5 months old. So she's still a baby. She's still,
getting used to
she's
people.
about 1.5 pounds. And so she's been conditioned the same way that Dash has, and she's still in the conditioning state. You know, we still work with her every day to get her comfortable with this and everything. It's a very different, you know, experience for a sloth to be touched and handled like this. So she is still, she's starting to do small encounters, but her encounters are only 20 minutes at a time, and then that's it. So she only gets like 2 20 minutes a day. And so she'll be at that for a while. And we'll slowly work her up to being around more people. But Dash is in for a rude awakening, because before we got Chloe, Dash was the baby. And so Dash was at the main house. And he's a year old now, and he's big enough, he climbs around on his own and can navigate himself. So he's eventually going to come down and be in Zoe's enclosure. And so Zoe, Dash, and Chloe all came from the same facility, the same guy. And the way that he has his setup made is that all of his mother sloths are in an environment all together. It's a really, really big place, and so they have areas to get away from each other if they want to, but they've been raised around a lot of other sloths, and so it's going to be a lot easier for Dash and Zoe and Chloe to be acclimated to being together than it would be for Flash. So Flash will always have his separate enclosure.
How long will sloths live?
So that's a good question. In captivity, the oldest sloth that we know of lived to be 54 years old. Yeah. Now in the wild, if you know, take into factor all of the animals that could potentially eat a sloth, it's cut down to about half of that. Now it's not typical that in captivity they live to be 50. Usually it's around 30 in captivity, and in the wild we expect it to be about 15. Although there's yet to be any scientists that have been able to track one singular sloth from birth until natural passing, because a lot of times they're eaten, and you know some people would consider that to be a natural way of going out, but scientists need to be able to calculate what it would be just by passing from old age.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that's still a work in progress, but definitely got some people working on it for sure. What do you see back there, bud? And sometimes when he's opening up his mouth like that, you can kind of see some of those little teeth.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have any teeth in the very front of his mouth, but on the sides, he's got 4 really sharp canines, and then back behind those, all of their molars are pointed too.
Okay.
So if you were to stumble across the skull of a sloth, you would definitely be thinking top of the food chain for sure.
Yeah,
Some
why
sort
do
of
they have
carnivore.
such large
And
canines?
they work, just they'll grind up against each other to where they grind up the leaves a lot easier than chomping it up. So it's just more efficient for them, a lot more effective.
So they're for grinding and not piercing their canines.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely could use them for piercing if there was a jaguar that was slow enough that left their, you know, some body part near their head like that. But most of the time it just doesn't work out that well for the sloths. But
Gosh, incredible creatures.
Mhm.
Just like learning about the kangaroos and the camels. It's like,
yeah. Well, I'm glad you guys have got to come and have the experience, and it was a little bit different from what you guys were planning on this morning, but
thank you. No, it's
you're very welcome, yeah.
Are you good, Iowa?
No.
You're okay?
It's also
Are
one
you
of my
done?
favorite animals.
Yeah? What's been your favorite thing about them?
I just like that they're slow. Like
Yeah. Doesn't make any sense for them to still be alive, still on this earth, but they are.
Mhm.
I know we started just a couple minutes late, and then you guys were a little bit later getting in here, but it's right at been about 30 minutes.
Yeah, well, we're good. Thank you very much.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome. We'll head back out here. I'm gonna have you guys sanitize your hands one more time.
Mhm.
So do you guys have any other